And I want to begin by thanking Emily in particular for having seen our first draft and seen the potential in it. I'm used to saying that creative writing is different. It's something we trot out regularly, isn't it? Creative writing is different. And this book is, I think, different from anything that CUP has published in the past. But difference was part of the point. We'll come on to this in a moment, but there were reasons why we wanted to write something that addressed creative writing in rather different ways. So I want to thank Emily for seeing the potential in that, for allowing us to have an extremely long title, which is, as many of you will have noted, an iambic heptameter, and it's probably one of the longest titles you've ever published. And to thank her generally for the work that she did to bring this together. Not just Emily, but the whole team. I never itemize teams because I think I'm bound to miss somebody out and they'll be deeply offended. But I do just want to say that the team has worked together tremendously to help us to get the best out of the pre-publication experience and now the publication itself. I also want to say thank you to Ellie. Ellie is our agent, without whom, etc. And we're very grateful to you, Ellie, for your professionalism and the way in which you've helped us with this. So,
yes, and we'd also like to thank all our family and friends. Some of our family is still on the way, I understand. And all of our friends. It's actually very touching to see how many people are willing to pay £3 to come. That might have been just thinking it was a bargain for the wine. Well, thank you very much for that. The book is dedicated to our students, and really we want to thank the great number of students who've come this evening, because it's only by teaching that we really have fully understood what developing writers need. You know, teachers think they know what students want, but in fact it's only by teaching and noticing that the same questions come up, that the same problems come up, that you're able to adapt your teaching to what people actually need rather than what you think they need. So the book's been very much written with you in mind, and we're very grateful to all of you for having been our students, but particularly to those who have turned up this evening, so thank you very much for that.
So this isn't going to be a formal talk at all, but I thought we might start the ball rolling. We hope that some of you will contribute or ask questions, but we thought that we might start the ball rolling by imagining ourselves at some kind of festival event in which I will ask Sarah what we did, and she will ask me what we did. And the first question is going to be, why did we write this book?
Why did we write this book? We wrote this book because we're often asked, and over the years have often been asked to recommend a book for students. And it's been very difficult, well, impossible to find one book. We could say this writer is good for this writer is good for that. So we thought, well, why don't we just write that book? Why don't we write the book that we're happy with all the advice in it and we think it covers all the bases? So that was really part of the reason why. One of the problems is that a lot of books about writing tell you how to write, how that person writes. That writer tells you how they write. And we're aware that all our writing students are different, so we want to get people to write how they write, to kind of enable them to do that. And the other thing is that a lot of those books are very prescriptive or proscriptive. So we didn't want, you must never do this, you should always do that. We wanted to basically offer developing writers a range of strategies that might be helpful and hope that they will find something that works for them. So I think that's where we wrote that book, unless you want to argue with me.
I think that just about covers it.
Have I got to ask you a question?
You've got to ask me a question.
Okay. What sort of writer is this book aimed at, Jem?
Absolutely everybody. We did have the idea, obviously, that we were going to be addressing departments of, they're usually departments of English. Creative writing doesn't have its own department usually, but we wanted to get out to the academy. But we're very used to working in adult education, that is particularly in the continuing education departments, institutes of Oxford and Cambridge. And we're very used to people coming in who don't want any kind of qualification at all. We're used also to people who don't necessarily want to be published. And I know that very often the question is, how can you possibly be teaching creative writing to all these people when you know perfectly well, statistically, that they can't all be published? That's not quite as true as it used to be, because of course many of our students do self-publish. But it's not a question for all of these students of being published. It's a question of enjoying the process of writing. And that's one of the other things that we had very much in mind, was that this wouldn't be a book that told you how to write a novel in 3 months. It wouldn't be a book that promised you anything at all, except that after you had finished reading it, you would, hopefully, be a better writer than you were when you started to read it. And that's really what we've been aiming at, is to help people to write better, and in the process to discover a confidence that they lacked before they began to read the book. This is collaboration.
I think we were going to talk about why people write.
Yes.
Okay, be very afraid, because if I don't get any answers here, I know some of your names. So why do we write? Does anyone want to give us their reason why they write? We maybe all write for different reasons. Why do we write?
Therapy.
Therapy. Good one, Ellie.
To see if I can.
To see if I can.
I think
Excellent.
it's like solving a puzzle as well.
Right. Good one. Yes. Any more?
Escapism.
Escapism. Yes. Good one.
To keep things alive, and especially like with playwriting,
Yeah.
because everybody's sort of moving to screenwriting for money spent. So to keep plays going and to make people laugh.
Right. And I think you will find as many different reasons for writing as there are writers. In fact, Margaret Atwood wrote a wonderful essay where she asked loads of writer friends why they wrote, and they all had completely different answers. But I think one of the things is we wouldn't do it because it isn't well paid and it is hard and you do have to be on your own a lot of the time. But we wouldn't do it if we didn't enjoy it. And I think that is so important. So I'm going to need the book in a minute because I'm going to read you something. And I think that the enjoyment that we get from writing is somehow kind of overlooked, and it is actually very important to a lot of people. Anne Tyler said this thing about reading, that, can you find it? That she said this thing about reading, which is that she reads in order to live more than one life. And I think that's absolutely true, but it's also true about writing. You know, you are somewhere else when you're writing, aren't you? You are often somebody else. But the difference with writing, of course, is you have control. You can be God in your own universe, and that's what's so brilliant. And I would like to read you something from Flaubert here. I think he was writing a letter, and he was writing to a friend, and he described the pleasures of writing. He said, "No matter whether good or bad, it is a delectable thing, writing. Not having to be yourself, being able to circulate in amongst the whole creation you're describing. Today, for instance, as a man and as a woman, as lover and mistress both, I've been out riding in a forest on an autumn afternoon, and I was the horses, the leaves, the wind, the words that they spoke to each other, and the red sunlight that made them half close their eyes that were brimming with love." Very difficult to follow that, so I'll let you follow that.
Well, just the point that Flaubert is making there is that we enter into the lives of our characters. And I think it's worth keeping that in mind at the moment, because there's a lot of talk about appropriation of other people's experience and so on. Yet I do want to say that that is what novelists do, really. Writers of fiction are appropriating other people's experience. If you don't, then you will simply be writing autobiography for the rest of your life. And we can quickly run out of autobiographical material, or interesting autobiographical material. So that's one of the things I think that needs to be borne in mind. But the other has to do with empathy. I think we've never been more in need, actually, of empathy than we are at the moment. And whether you're a reader or a writer, your ability to empathise with other characters, people other than yourself, is absolutely crucial. And there's another thing that's being lost at the moment, which isn't what Flaubert was talking about, but perhaps we could end with this, which is the connection between words and truth. It was George Orwell who pointed out that insofar as language decays or is abused, to that extent people will also lose their social connectivity. People will be open to abuse precisely because language has deteriorated. And so the idea that fictions are truths may seem to be a kind of paradox. But Alan Rodway, the critic Alan Rodway, had a book entitled Truths of Fiction. And I think we need to keep hold of those truths, those deeper truths. Fiction may not be fact, but the best fiction is truth. And in a world where truth seems to be disregarded, we really need to keep hold of the idea that language is the medium by which truth can be conveyed.